It was December 15th. My boss, Mr. Wright, called me into his office. I had been working at the law firm for 3 years as a paralegal, and this was the first time he had ever summoned me with that particular tone of voice. Not angry, but serious. Important. I walked in nervously, smoothing down my skirt. He was sitting behind his massive desk, and there was an envelope in front of him. "Sophie," he said, looking up with a rare smile. "I wanted to personally thank you for your work on the Henderson case. Your research saved us at least 6 months of discovery and probably $250,000 in billable hours." He pushed the envelope across the desk. "This is your Christmas bonus." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a check for $5,000. $5,000. I had never seen that much money with my name on it. My heart soared. This was it. This was my ticket to finally moving out of my parents' house and into my own apartment. This was my independence, finally printed on paper and signed by the firm. I thanked Mr. Wright, walked back to my desk, and immediately started looking at apartment listings. I was so happy I could barely focus on work. That night, I made a mistake. I told my parents about the bonus over dinner. We were having pot roast, my mom's specialty, and I was so excited I could not keep it to myself. "I got my Christmas bonus today," I said, trying to sound casual but failing completely. $5,000. My mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. My dad looked up from his plate. "That is wonderful, honey," my mom said, but her smile was different. It was not the proud mom smile I had been hoping for. It was calculating. Sharp. She shared a look with my dad across the table, one of those silent conversations that married people have. "You know," she began, setting down her fork, "your father and I have been looking at these holiday packages. Last-minute deals to the Caribbean. We have been working so hard, and we deserve a little break before the new year." The air in the room changed. I felt it shift, felt the weight of expectation settling on my shoulders. My bonus was no longer mine. In their eyes, it had already become a family fund. Something they were entitled to. The next morning, I came downstairs to find glossy brochures spread across the kitchen table. A luxury resort in the Bahamas. White sand beaches. Infinity pools. Overwater bungalows. My father was standing there with his coffee, looking pleased with himself. "It is all booked," he announced, like he was presenting me with a gift. "We leave on the 23rd. We just need to finalize the payment. We will use your bonus and pay you back in installments. Slow and steady. You will barely notice." My heart sank into my stomach. I stared at the brochures, at the price breakdown written in my father's handwriting. $5,200 total. My entire bonus, plus some. "No," I said. The word came out quieter than I intended. "What?" My mother looked genuinely confused. "No. That money is for my apartment. For my future. I have been saving for years to move out, and this is my chance." Their smiles vanished instantly, replaced with cold disappointment. "After all we have done for you," my mom said, her voice dripping with guilt. "We raised you. We fed you. And you cannot do this one thing for us." I felt like I was being crushed. But I held firm. "No. I am sorry, but no." 2 days later, on December 17th, I was at work when my phone buzzed with a banking alert. Low balance warning. I frowned and pulled up my banking app. It was for an old savings account, the one I had opened when I got my first job at the library in high school. I had not used it in years, but I had never closed it either. I logged in and my stomach dropped. The balance was zero. There had been a single transaction. $5,000 transferred to an account in my father's name. The memo line read, "Trip," with 2 exclamation points. They had done it. They had just taken the money. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone, unable to breathe. My hands were shaking. I checked the account details, and there it was, plain as day. My parents' names were still on the account from when I was a minor. I had never removed them. I had never thought I needed to. They had accessed my account while I was at work and transferred my entire bonus to themselves. I felt sick, betrayed, completely alone. I drove home during my lunch break, my mind racing. When I walked into the house, it was empty. My parents were both at work. But there, on the kitchen counter, propped against the coffee maker, was a card. It had a picture of a palm tree and a sunset on the front. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside, in my mother's looping handwriting, it said, "Merry Christmas to us. We are off to the sun. Do not be mad, sweetie. We will sort this out when we get back. We deserve this little break. Love, Mom and Dad." The word "sort" made my blood run cold. It was so vague, so non-committal. It meant they had no real plan to pay me back. They had just taken what they wanted and assumed I would get over it. I stood there in the empty kitchen, holding that card, and something inside me broke. Not in a sad way. In a clear, focused way. I put the card down, got back in my car, and drove straight back to the office. Because the place they had stolen from was not just my bank account. It was my workplace. My professional world. And I knew exactly what to do. I went straight to my desk and sat down. The quiet, orderly office felt like a sanctuary. Everything here made sense. Everything here had rules. I stared at the framed picture of my parents I kept on my filing cabinet, taken last Christmas when everything still felt normal. The hurt was a physical pain in my chest. My colleague, Amanda, walked by and stopped when she saw my face. "Sophie, are you okay? You look like you have seen a ghost." I tried to smile, but could not manage it. "Just family stuff," I said quietly. She nodded sympathetically and moved on. But I knew where I needed to go. Our firm did not just handle corporate law. We had a whole division that specialized in financial litigation, fraud, asset recovery, white-collar crime. And I knew the partner who ran it, Joseph Sterling. He was known for being fierce, ethical, and absolutely relentless when someone had been wronged. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked down the hall to his office. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was solid. I knocked on his door. Mr. Sterling looked up from his desk. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Sophie, come in. What can I do for you?" I sat down across from him and laid it all out. The bonus. The old account with my parents' names still on it. The unauthorized transfer. The note they had left. My voice shook as I spoke, but I got through it. When I finished, Mr. Sterling leaned back in his chair, his expression stern. "Sophie, that is theft," he said simply. "Even from family." Legally speaking, they accessed an account and transferred funds without your knowledge or consent for their own benefit. That meets the definition. He paused, studying me. "What do you want to do about it?" I took a breath. "I want my money back. And I want to make sure they understand they cannot do this to me. Or to anyone." He nodded slowly. "Then let's start with the bank. We will file a formal dispute for unauthorized transfer. It will be complicated because their names are on the account, but the transfer was made without your knowledge. That matters." I felt a spark of hope. For the first time since seeing that zero balance, I felt like I had some power back. The next morning, Mr. Sterling and I went to the bank together. He came as my legal counsel, which immediately changed how the bank officer treated the situation. We sat in a small conference room, and I explained everything again. The officer, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked genuinely sad. "This is a common scenario," she said quietly. "Family members with old joint accounts. It is one of the saddest things we deal with." She started the paperwork for a fraud investigation. Because my parents' names were on the account, the process would take time. But the transfer had been made without my consent, and that was the key. "We will freeze the account and begin the investigation," she explained. "It may take several weeks, but if the findings support your claim, the funds can be recovered." I signed everything she put in front of me. It was a small first step, but it made me feel strong. like I was fighting back instead of just accepting what had happened. Mr. Sterling walked me back to the office. "This is just the beginning," he said. "But you did the right thing." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and determination. My parents were already gone. They had left early that morning, December 23rd, before I woke up. The silence in the house was heavy and oppressive. I checked their social media, something I rarely did. My mother had already posted a photo from the airport lounge. She and my father were holding tropical cocktails, laughing at the camera. The caption read, "Sunshine, here we come. We deserve this. Hashtag holiday magic, hashtag blessed life." They were celebrating with my money. My stolen money. The comments were full of people congratulating them, telling them to enjoy, saying they deserved a break. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew they had funded this dream vacation by stealing from their own daughter. I stared at that photo for a long time. The hurt I had been feeling started to harden into something else. Something cold and focused. They thought they had won. They thought I would just accept this, be angry for a while, and then move on. They were wrong. I was not going to let this go. I was going to make sure there were consequences. Real, legal consequences. With Mr. Sterling's guidance, I did something I had never dared to do before. I looked into my parents' finances. It felt invasive, wrong, like I was crossing a line. But Mr. Sterling assured me it was necessary. "If we are going to understand the full picture," he said, "we need to know what we are dealing with." Public records told a story I had not known. My parents had taken out a second mortgage on the house 2 years ago. They had 3 maxed-out credit cards. A car loan they were behind on. Court records showed a pending lawsuit from a creditor I did not recognize. They were drowning in debt. Suddenly, their desperate grab for my bonus made horrible sense. This was not just a fun vacation. It was an escape. A brief moment of denial before everything came crashing down. And they had used my life raft to fund their fantasy. I felt sick. But I also felt something else. Clarity. This was bigger than just getting my money back. This was about stopping them from destroying themselves and taking me down with them. I was at my desk a few days later, researching case law for a different matter, when I came across a legal term I had seen before but never fully understood: fraudulent transfer. I read the definition carefully. It was when someone moved assets or money to avoid paying legitimate debts. If a person was insolvent, meaning they owed more than they owned, and they transferred money away without getting something of equal value in return, that transfer could be challenged by their creditors. A light bulb went off in my head. My parents were deeply in debt. They had just taken $5,000 from me and given me nothing in return. If their creditors came after them, could that transfer be reversed? Could the money be clawed back? I walked down to Mr. Sterling's office with the statute printed out. I knocked and he waved me in. "I think I found something," I said, handing him the paper. He read it and his eyes sharpened. "Fraudulent transfer," he said slowly. "Yes. If they're insolvent, this could be very relevant." He looked at me. "Do they have any major creditors actively pursuing them?" As if the universe was answering, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled out my phone. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Mr. Sterling and I continued talking, mapping out possibilities. A few minutes later, I listened to the voicemail on speaker so he could hear. It was a man with a gruff, professional voice. "This is a message for Frank and Diane Miller. This is the law office of Peterson and Lowe. We represent Superior Lending regarding your defaulted personal loan. You have failed to respond to multiple notices. Please contact us immediately to arrange payment, or we will have no choice but to pursue legal action." This is a formal warning. I looked at Mr. Sterling. He was smiling, but it was a cold, professional smile. "Well," he said, "that changes everything. My parents were not just in debt. They were being actively pursued by a creditor's law firm. And they had just taken $5,000 out of their estate. out of the pool of assets that creditor could potentially claim. Mr. Sterling leaned forward. Sophie, you are now a creditor of your parents too. You are owed $5,000. And their other creditor has a very strong interest in making sure all recently transferred assets are recovered. He paused. We can use this. Over the next hour, Mr. Sterling and I developed a strategy. It was elegant, legal, and completely ruthless. We would send a formal demand letter to my parents, stating the facts of the unauthorized transfer and demanding full repayment. But here was the key. We would carbon copy the letter to Peterson and Lowe, the law firm representing Superior Lending. Why? I asked. Mr. Sterling explained. Because they need to know that your parents just moved $5,000 right before their debt case heats up. That looks like they were trying to hide assets. Peterson and Lowe will jump on this. They will want that money back in your parents' estate so they can potentially collect from it. I felt a chill. So by trying to get my money back, I am also making sure their creditor knows about it? He nodded. Exactly. You are protecting your own interests. But in doing so, you are also alerting another creditor to what looks like a fraudulent transfer. Your parents will be caught between two legal demands. Yours and Superior Lending's. It was perfect. It was terrifying. It was justice. Let's do it, I said. We spent the afternoon drafting the letter. Mr. Sterling wrote it in his precise, lawyer language. It was cold and perfect. It stated the facts, the unauthorized transfer from an account bearing my name, made without my knowledge or consent, while I was at work. It referenced the bank's ongoing fraud investigation. It demanded full repayment of $5,000 within 48 hours of receipt. And then came the final paragraph, the one that made my hands shake as I read it. Please be advised that failure to comply with this demand will leave us no choice, but to pursue all available legal remedies, including but not limited to petitioning the court to have this transfer declared fraudulent as to other creditors. A copy of this letter is being provided to all interested parties. Mr. Sterling signed it on firm letterhead. I addressed the envelope to my home address. And we prepared a second copy, marked CC, Peterson and Lowe, attorneys for Superior Lending. The trap was set, and it was made entirely of my parents' own bad decisions. I was just closing the door behind them. We needed to time this perfectly. My parents' flight was scheduled to return on December 28th at 7:15 p.m. Mr. Sterling looked at the calendar and smiled. We send this via certified mail, requiring signature, for delivery on December 29th. They will land tired, jet-lagged, maybe still in that vacation haze. They will think they have gotten away with it. He looked at me. And then reality will show up at their door before noon. I felt a surge of something I could not quite name. Not happiness, exactly. More like grim satisfaction. They will be home, probably still unpacking, when the letter arrives, I said. Mr. Sterling nodded. Exactly. No time to prepare. No time to come up with excuses. Just immediate, undeniable consequences. We took both letters to the post office. I watched as the clerk stamped them, scanned the certified mail barcodes, and handed me the tracking numbers. It was done. The letters were in motion. There was no taking it back now. And, honestly, I did not want to. I wanted them to feel even a fraction of the shock and betrayal I had felt when I saw that zero balance. Christmas Day was strange and quiet. I stayed in my parents' house because I had nowhere else to go. I worked a little, organizing files for an upcoming case. In the afternoon, I volunteered at a local soup kitchen, serving meals to people who had far less than I did. It put things in perspective. I was hurt, but I was not broken. I had my job. I had my education. I had options. Later that evening, I did something that felt like reclaiming my life. I used a small portion of my remaining savings to put down a deposit on a tiny studio apartment across town. It was small but bright, with a window that overlooked a park. The landlord said I could move in on January 2nd. I will take it, I told him. I signed the lease right there, my hands steady. This was my declaration of independence. My parents had tried to steal my future, but I was building it anyway. With or without their blessing. With or without their stolen money. I was going to be okay. But they were about to find out they were not. On the evening of December 28th, I checked the flight tracker. My parents' plane landed at 7:33 p.m., only 18 minutes late. My phone stayed silent. An hour later, I checked social media. My mother had posted a selfie from the baggage claim. She looked tired but happy, her face tan, my father standing beside her with sunglasses pushed up on his head. The caption read, "Back to reality, but what a dream trip. Memories to last a lifetime." I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just a cold, focused calm. I opened the tracking app for the certified letter. It was in transit, scheduled for delivery the next morning between 10 and noon. I went to bed early, but I barely slept. I kept thinking about that moment when my father would open the door, see the mail carrier, sign for the thick envelope. The moment when he would read the letterhead. The moment when everything would change for them. I woke up at 6 a.m. and got ready for work. Today was going to be a very long day. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to review a contract, when the tracking app updated at 10:03 a.m. delivered. Signed for by F. Miller. My father had signed for it. I pictured him at the front door, probably still in his robe, confused by the certified mail, taking the envelope from the carrier. Maybe he thought it was a late Christmas card from a relative. Maybe he thought it was junk mail. But the moment he opened it and saw that letterhead, saw the words "demand for repayment" in bold at the top, his confusion would turn to shock. My phone rang 14 minutes later. It was my mother. Her voice was shrill, panicked, barely coherent. "Sophie, what is this? What have you done? A legal letter? From your own workplace? This is insane. This is cruel. How could you do this to us?" I stayed perfectly calm. My voice was steady. "It is a demand for the return of the money you stole from me, Mom. You have 48 hours to comply." She sputtered. "We did not steal. We are your parents. You cannot sue your own parents. This is ridiculous." I took a breath. "Actually, Mom, I can." And I did. "You have 48 hours. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt strong. Clear. Right. An hour later, my phone rang again. Different number. I did not recognize it, but I answered anyway. "Sophie Miller?" The voice was the same gruff one from the voicemail. "This is Daniel Peterson from Peterson & Lowe. We represent Superior Lending in their case against your parents, Frank and Diane Miller." My heart started pounding. "We received a very interesting carbon copy of a demand letter this morning. We understand your parents recently transferred $5,000 from your account to theirs." I swallowed. "Yes, without my knowledge or permission." There was a pause. "Ms. Miller, we need to meet with you. Today, if possible. This transfer is extremely relevant to our client's case." I looked at the clock. It was 11:15. "I can meet at 1 p.m. He agreed immediately. "Our office. I will send you the address." After I hung up, I walked down to Mr. Sterling's office. He was expecting me. "They called." I nodded. He smiled. "Good. Let me come with you. You are going to need counsel." The walls were closing in on my parents from two directions now. Mine and Superior Lending's. And they had built those walls themselves. The meeting with Peterson and Lowe was fascinating in a grim way. Daniel Peterson was a tall, thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and zero warmth. He laid out Superior Lending's case against my parents. They had taken out a $15,000 personal loan 18 months ago. They had made 3 payments and then stopped. The debt, with interest and fees, was now over $20,000. "We have been trying to collect for months," Peterson explained. "We were preparing to file a lawsuit to obtain a judgment and potentially place liens on their assets." He looked at me. "And then we got your letter." informing us that your parents just transferred $5,000 out of their name and into a vacation. That is a textbook fraudulent transfer. Mr. Sterling leaned forward. What are you proposing? Peterson did not hesitate. If Ms. Miller's parents return the $5,000 to her immediately, we will hold off on our lawsuit for 30 days. But we will be watching. If they fail to repay her, we will move forward and include the transfer in our complaint as evidence of fraudulent intent. It was an ultimatum. Pay me back, or face a lawsuit that would likely cost them the house. My parents had 48 hours to choose. I went home that evening. I had not been back to my parents' house since the letter was delivered. When I walked in, they were sitting at the kitchen table. The legal letter was spread out in front of them, along with papers from Peterson and Lowe that must have arrived in the afternoon mail. They looked old, defeated, scared. My father looked up at me, and his eyes were hollow. You have ruined us, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. That law firm is calling nonstop. They're talking about seizing the house, putting liens on everything. We are going to lose it all. My mother was crying softly. How could you be so cruel? We are your parents. We raised you. And you did this to us. I stood there, looking at them, feeling a complicated tangle of emotions. Anger, pity, sadness. But underneath it all, solid and unshakable, was the knowledge that I was right. You stole from me, I said quietly. You accessed my account without my permission, took my entire Christmas bonus, and used it to fund a vacation. While I was at work, you left me a note like it was funny, like it did not matter. I paused. This is the consequence. You left me no choice. The next day, Mr. Sterling called me into his office. Peterson and Lowe formally contacted me this morning. They have laid out the terms clearly. If your parents return the full $5,000 to you by December 31st, they will hold off on their lawsuit temporarily. But they will continue monitoring your parents' finances. And if there are any other suspicious transfers, they will file immediately. I nodded slowly. So my parents have to pay me back, or they get sued for $20,000 plus legal fees. Mr. Sterling confirmed. Exactly. They are caught. They cannot afford to fight both of you. They will have to choose the lesser pain, which is paying you back. I felt a strange sense of finality. This was it. This was how it would end. Not with apologies or reconciliation, but with a forced repayment under threat of legal action. It was not the ending I would have chosen a month ago. But it was the ending I needed now. My parents had 2 days to come up with $5,000. And I knew they did not have it. Which meant they would have to borrow it, probably from family, at a high interest rate. The irony was almost poetic. On December 31st, at 11:47 a.m., I received a notification from my bank. Wire transfer received. $5,000. From an account in my Aunt Linda's name. The memo line read simply, repayment. My parents had borrowed the money from my mother's sister, their last remaining family ally. I could only imagine that conversation, the humiliation of having to explain why they needed $5,000 immediately. I forwarded the confirmation to Mr. Sterling. He sent it on to Peterson and Lowe. My part was over. I had my money back. Every cent. But my parents' crisis was just beginning. Because even though they had paid me, they still owed Superior Lending over $20,000. And now they owed my $5,000 on top of that. They had solved one problem by creating another. That evening, I checked my mother's social media one last time. All the vacation photos had been deleted. Her profile was blank. The fantasy was over. Reality had arrived, and it was unforgiving. I closed the app and did not look back. I had won. But it did not feel like victory. It just felt like survival. On January 2nd, I moved into my studio apartment. It was a cold, bright morning. The apartment was tiny but perfect. One room with a kitchenette, a small bathroom, and that beautiful window overlooking the park. I spent the day unpacking my things, hanging up my few pieces of art, arranging my books on the small shelf. It was mine. Completely, totally mine. Around 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was my mother. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was defeated, hollow. The lawsuit is moving forward anyway, she said quietly. Peterson and Lowe said we only bought ourselves 30 days. They are still filing. We are going to lose the house. She paused, and I heard her crying softly. We might have to declare bankruptcy. Your aunt wants her money back by February, and we do not have it. We just wanted one nice thing, Sophie. One trip to feel like we were not drowning. I looked out my window at the fresh snow covering the park, making everything clean and new. I wanted my own life, Mom, I said, my voice soft but firm. And now I have it. There was a long silence on the phone. Then my mother spoke again, her voice small. Do you hate us? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I do not hate you. But I do not trust you. And I cannot let you treat my life like it is your backup plan. She made a sound, half sob, half laugh. We messed up. We messed up so badly. I nodded, even though she could not see me. Yeah, you did. We hung up without saying goodbye. I stood there in my new apartment, surrounded by my things, my fresh start. I did not feel angry anymore. I did not feel hurt. I just felt free. My parents had tried to steal my future to fund their fantasy. And in defending myself, I had learned something crucial. I was stronger than I thought. I was capable of standing up to the people I loved most, even when it cost me their approval. I sat down on my new couch and looked around. This little apartment, this quiet space, was worth more than any vacation could ever be. Because it was not just a place to live. It was proof. Proof that I could fight back. Proof that I could build my own life. Proof that I would never, ever let anyone make me feel small again. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, I was finally completely home.